So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the recommended lecture length and speaking speed, okay? So first and foremost, this is important, especially for your global audience out there. Now, I struggle with this more than some of you might, and some of you might struggle with this just the same as me, but it is important to understand that shorter lectures, when you're talking about lecture length, obviously do better. Now, I can get off tangents, I can, get enwrapped and kind of entrenched in creating a video and kind of lose sight of the time, and, before I know it, I look up and like 15 minutes or 20 minutes is gone, right? And that's good for certain things where, you have an audience that really cares about the topic that you're teaching. That said, shorter lectures, especially on Udemy as well, tend to do better, and there's a reason for that. So people tend to have shorter attention spans, and that way you can kind of build off the watch time, right? It's much better to accumulate, consecutive 3 minutes of watch time every single lecture than it is to have like a 15 to 20 minute video and lose somebody 10 minutes in, right? Because obviously if you build on the watch time, you'll accumulate a lot more over time. Like I said, people have a short attention span, so know that, and if you have to break apart lectures into smaller parts, you can potentially do so. One of the ways that I've done it in the past is if I record a lecture and I don't realize that I'm speaking, for 20 minutes, and I want to upload that, and I think, okay, every other lecture in this course is like 3 to 5 minutes, but then I'm throwing in a 20-minute one there, I'm probably going to lose a lot of people, right? A lot of people are not going to make it through that 20 minutes of that lecture. And so what I'll do is I'll cut it up into like 2 or 3 parts and just say like, whatever it's titled, if it were titled, lecture length and speaking speed, I wouldn't just throw up one 20-minute lecture length and speaking speed lecture. Instead, what I would do is I'd throw up 3 of them maybe, right? And title it lecture length and speaking speed part 1 and clip it into like 7 minutes to 8 minutes where there's like a good part where I can literally cut it. And then what I do is I throw up part 2 and part 3 and so on and so forth. So that's a little tip and a little trick that will help you accumulate more watch time and obviously increase your student experience. Now, because of subtitles too, and the international barrier and the international audience that is on Udemy, you do want to try to speak slower. So now we're going to move on to the speaking speed. We already talked about why lecture length is a little bit, the shorter lectures tend to do better and accumulate more students and kind of get that snowball rolling, so to speak, than longer lectures, okay? So I personally struggle with ratings a lot because I speak fast, and you're taking a lot of this course. This course is probably like 100 to 150 lectures depending on when you're watching it and what I've added to it at that current time. And I'm sure there's been a few lectures where you've been like, whoa, dude, like this guy's like, his energy level's up here, or he's speaking way too fast and it's hard to, keep track of what he's saying, especially when you're learning new things, and I totally get that. That said, it's just, how I communicate. I've tried to slow it down, and I literally consciously try to do that, especially on Udemy and Skillshare and even on YouTube from time to time. It's just my default. It's what I go back to. So what I would say is, because I struggle with ratings, and you will probably too if you speak like me and you speak very fast, I would recommend that you consciously try to speak slower. Consciously try to slow your speech patterns down, and that will obviously come off a little bit clearer to the audience that is, an international audience or somebody that isn't speaking your native language as their first language, right? So a lot of people that are on Udemy, a lot of them don't even speak English and they get subtitles, but a lot of them do speak English, but it's their second or third language, right? So if I speak really fast, it's very, very hard to understand them. And if I speak a lot slower, it's very, very hard for them to understand me. But if I speak a lot slower, they can kind of decipher it and kind of follow along a little bit better. And I understand that personally because I can speak Spanish a little bit. Like I can kind of understand and communicate. But when I go to like the last Spanish place I went to was Peru, right? And even in Spain, when I was in Spain with my girlfriend, I would try to have conversations with people, and they would just spurt off Spanish like so fast, and I would freeze up and I'd panic, and I'd be like, no say, which means like I don't know what you're saying, like I had no idea what you're talking about, like, and I'd just be like, oh no habla español, like I don't speak Spanish, because the reason being is they were speaking way too fast, and I didn't have enough time to process it. But so what I'm trying to say is, if you speak slower, you slow down your speech patterns, especially on Udemy where there's an international audience, you'll tend to get better ratings, and you'll tend to accumulate that watch time over time a lot more with everybody, not just English speakers, but also second native language English speakers as well, okay? So some people do love that I speak fast, and if you speak fast and you want to just say, hey, this is me, this is how I am as an instructor, more power to you. I totally get that. It's fine. Some people are going to love it. Some people aren't going to mind one way or the other, and a lot of people might complain because it's hard to follow, especially, like I said, when they're learning something new. You have to understand that when you're creating a course, a lot of the people that are taking the course are not as seasoned as you are, and they don't understand the little nuances like you do because you're the instructor and you obviously know a lot about that topic. They're learning something brand new to them, or fairly new to them, and so a slower communication of that topic and that basically how to do that will go a long way to help them understand it a lot better. And if they understand it a lot better, then their course experience and their experience as a student will be a lot better, and that will result in a higher rating and more watch time for you, thus increasing your ranking on the platform and making you more money, right? So the key here is slow down and try to speak slower if you want to. If you don't, just more power to you. I totally understand it, but I would recommend that you keep your lecture short. You try to speak a little bit slower if you tend to speak fast, or even if you don't, I would recommend just a little bit slower. But keep in mind, you don't want to go all the way to the point where you get boring and you lose some of the enthusiasm and you're speaking too slow, because that will also have an adverse effect on your watch time and the student experience. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's all about having balance, and keep in mind that if you tend to speak very, very slow, just completely ignore this. If you tend to speak very, very fast, then maybe think about slowing down your speech patterns, and also think about having shorter lecture lengths or cutting your lectures into certain parts.